go. Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Cyber Power of Tigray Media. My name is Evander Smith. Alongside me is
Ephraim.
Ephraim. If you notice, I just sliced my finger. You know, that's the thing about doing live production, you know.
Last finger now.
I know, right? So I got a little tape it up until I can get home. And
You're planning to take a day off or something?
Ouch! Whoa! You know, yeah. Ephraim, what are we talking about today?
Today, welcome our followers and the Tigray of people, as well as the Ethiopian people, and the people who are watching about what's going on in Tigray, the entire world. Today we're going to talk about the failure to implement the peace agreement in Pretoria, which is taking place in Pretoria and Kenya and Nairobi, will lead to the worst genocide in Tigray. So this is going to be our main topic today to talk about.
Okay, let's take the people back. For those that don't know about Ethiopian history and stuff like that, for the last 2 to 3 years, how did this conflict come about?
Great.
How did it get started?
Yeah, great question. It's very complicated, you know. When this conflict happened, the cause of it is just like, you know, it was a smooth transition, the power of transition from the Prime Minister Meles Zenawi was in power.
The Nobel Peace Prize guy, right?
Okay. That's Abiy Ahmed. the Nobel Peace Prize is...
we say peace in quotation.
Peace, right, exactly. And he actually had a PhD about conflict resolution.
Wow.
Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, I never told you that before. But Abiy Ahmed has a conflict resolution. That's his PhD.
Wow.
But the problem is nobody knows how he get that process, you know. Most of his friends, they don't know if he has, like, you know, a straight, like, you know, taking grades from 12. I think from 6 to 7, it was unknown. Nobody knows where school he went to, because he was in Ministry of Defense. And then, you know, they've been giving them, like, you know, some kind of privileges to learn.
Okay.
And I think, well, anyways, the mess, how happened, the conflict was happened after the smooth transition of power. The Prime Minister Meles Zenawi was in power for a long time. So, and Ethiopia was, like, you know, more stable economically, politically, in everything, because he was in power. Even though he was in power for a long time, but it wasn't from his choice. It was from his party's choice. They've been keep electing him, and then they had a rule within the EPRDF. If the party is electing you, then you cannot say no. You have to keep going. But the people was tired of him, you know, because they think he was a dictator. He was trying to stay in power for that much.
Okay.
Anyway. The change happened because after he visited, like, you know, different countries, and then he was sick, and then he was emergently taken to the hospital in Europe, Germany area, and then I think he was passed away within 3 weeks. It was sad story. But anyways, his deputy prime minister, Haile Mariam Desalegn, was his deputy. And then nothing happened the whole entire Ethiopia. Nobody was trying to take that power without, or, like, you know, it was just smooth. He went to the parliament, and then he made his oath, and then he became the prime minister. But after Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn was in power for 3 years, the country totally started to mess up. I mean, the country was deteriorating. There's a lot of lack of job. A lot of people was a lot of politicians was try to talk about being EHADIC or EPRDF in power for a long time, and Haile Mariam Desalegn was not sufficient enough to solve that kind of issue, and he probably was not as smart as Meles Zenawi, and then he was people were when you are not
So-
knowledgeable enough, people will start manipulating you, and then he wasn't able to solve the whole entire issue, and then we had a lot of multiple demonstrations.
Wow.
Especially the Oromia region, which is one of the big tribe in Ethiopia. They start having multiple demonstrations, and they trying to take over the power forcefully, and they have start burning a lot of factories, companies. They block roads, and then the Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn resigned before his term was up, which is a good thing, right? If you cannot lead the country,
It's like
that's
lead, follow, or get out of the way.
exactly. That's the only nice thing that he did. But when he was doing that, it was he was assigned to this person privately. They were working together, and he's actually now, even though he's not a prime minister, the former prime minister, Haile Mariam Desalegn, is acting as the deputy prime minister. He's doing everything behind this guy.
Wow.
But anyways, even after all that, Abiy Ahmed came to the power. Abiy Ahmed came to the power. He totally was paranoid about the TPLF party. He was trying to get rid of them from the beginning. He started leveling them names. He said in front of a lot of people in the crowd, he said hyenas, those are terrorists. They're trying to, they were in power for the last 27 years, and those 27 years were in darkness. We were in darkness. This is just he was talking about multiple words that can create conflict easily.
Now, for the people that don't know, could you explain that the TLF? What's the name behind that?
Right. So TPLF means Tigray People Liberation Front, which is the former and the biggest party in Tigray region.
Okay.
And actually, this party was created or joined with other parties in Ethiopia, which is the Amhara, Ba'aden, and the Jihadic, and also the OPDO, the Oromo People Liberation Front. Those four.
So you guys have
joined.
4 parties.
We had 4 big parties, even though we had multiple tribes. We have more than 83 tribes.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, that's better than what we have in America. We only have 2 parties now. and
Democrat and Republican.
Yeah,
right?
that just limit your choice. I kind of like how you guys had the 4-party system. Then you can okay, we don't want that guy. We don't want that party. Let's try this party over here. But did it all consolidated?
They were consolidated, especially for the last 27 years.
Okay.
They were doing great, which is, when I would say great, it was not fully democratic. There is a lot of corruption in between. There is a lot of things. But other than the fight with Eritrea, we never had a lot of conflicts inside the country. The entire country was almost 98% was peaceful. Everybody was moving around day and night. You could do a lot of investment. We had created multiple millionaires. We had multiple buildings were built. Road technology was good. Health sectors were like almost everywhere. Education was almost everywhere. We had like private colleges, universities, high schools. In even in a small rural area, we have had like those basic necessities fulfilled because of the good leadership from the EPRDF.
Wow.
Now, how that happened, the conflict, then when Abiy came to the power, he started joining with Eritrea, which is Eritrea was the most dictator, the one president in Eritrea for more than 30 years. There is no party or there is no media or anything in Eritrea. And those Eritrean people is also in siege by their own government for 30 years. They've been trying to get out of the country via the ocean at the Red Sea. And a lot of them were like, being a victim of those bad fish and and they were trying to go out of the country through Libya, because if you say something, they will kill you.
Wow.
If you are like if you read, there are a lot of smart people who were written books and then they were thrown away to the prison. They have a lot of prisons and education areas. They only have one university in Asmara, and that university was closed away. And all the young and the youth had to serve the country for the service, national service. They took them like, for 2 years, but they'll never come back. They always like, the
Always in
borders.
Wow.
And they don't have no any benefits. If you serve in this, because you are military here in the United States, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. I got great benefits.
Exactly. Yeah, the great benefits.
Yeah.
But in Eritrea, I mean, it's better in Ethiopia if you are a military. Actually, they have like good system. But Eritreans, they're we are family.
I was about to say, so
speak-
basically what happened in Eritrea came down and happened in Tigray. Similar.
Exactly.
Similar.
Similar.
Wow.
Because especially the Tigray people and the Eritrean people, they speak the same language. They have the same culture.
Wow.
Like most of them, even though they have like small tribes in within.
Yeah.
But the majority of Eritrean people and the majority of Tigrayan people speaks Tigrinya. And you cannot even tell who is Eritrean or who is Tigray. We are just similar. We look alike.
Yeah.
And we speak the same language and we have the same culture. It's just crazy. But those people in power, they have done this purposely.
Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer.
That's been around for thousands of years.
Right.
Divide and conquer. That way you stay in power.
Right. That's their secret, to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyways, because of that, and the TPLF was like saying, okay, we are part of the country. Why are you inviting Eritrean president to the very secret area, like the Air Force? He was giving him like, tours, the Ethiopian Air Force. And they were like, exchanging like rings in between. Your case is my case. If anybody comes to your power, I'll get him.
Yeah.
But the regional government of Tigray was isolated, completely isolated.
Wow.
And they even sent like, some kind of special commandos to take those regional governments away from Tigray. And, okay, this is enough. First of all, we need to know what's going on with the Eritrea.
Yeah.
It has to be made officially. What are you guys agreeing with? What are you guys signing? Why are you like, getting away all this military from Tigray? Because they said, okay, we're going to have like, peaceful agreement. And then they opened the borders. Once they open the borders, because the people love each other and they know each other, and they speak the same language, and then they just run away and then they just hug each other, everyone. because they were on
separate sides and stuff. Yeah,
separate side for
it's
a
kind of
long
like
time.
kind of like when Germany, you had East Germany and West Germany, and it had a wall, literally a wall that separated.
Exactly.
You know, and so once they broke down the wall, you know, it was like you said, oh hey, how you doing? You know, it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
It is crazy. So that's more or less how the Eritrean and the Amari militia pretty much.
Yeah. Let me finish on that. The conflict, how the conflict started.
Okay. Cause it seemed like you was going down that road, man. Cause I'm like, you're getting ahead of me, man. You're getting ahead of me.
right. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then it was a COVID time, right? That time. And
Yeah.
I just want to mention something. What happened? And then the Constitution says if the regional government and the federal government must be elected every 5 years. Okay. So the 5 years term was done already. And the regional government, like, you know, they consider themselves the constitutional guard, you know. We created this, and we have to follow the constitution and this. Okay, and the prime minister says, no, this is COVID time. You cannot have any kind of crowd. You cannot have no election. Yeah, we have to postpone this. No, it doesn't say that. Some other countries are doing it. We can do it too. Mm-hmm. We're going to have, like, you know, safety measures. We're going to have masks. We're going to follow the distance, and we're going to have, like, you know, the election. We cannot continue without doing election. We have to follow the constitution. Violation of the constitution is violation of the people of, you know, the democratic way of thing. The federal government is also needs to, because Abiy had only 2 years left. He was not elected. He was assigned after Haile Mariam Desalegn was resigned after three years of term. You got it now? So
he came in and pushed the other guy out.
He pushed the other guy out, and then within 2 years, he doesn't want to do any election because he was not, like, you know, comfortable enough.
And so the Tigrayan people liked him while he was
at the beginning, yes. Okay. Once he started talking about, like, you know, bad words about the Tigray People Liberation Front, and then the entire 27 years process, he was like, you know, he was calling them, those are the Dehainas, you know.
Wow.
Those are, you know, the terrorists. They never had, like, you know, solve any conflict peacefully. They are, like, you know, terrorists, you know, this and that, you know. They start, like, you know, word fighting first, you know.
Yeah.
And then the tension was very strong. So when the tension was very strong, Abiy wanted to stay a little bit in power until he has his own, you know, system to stay in the power.
Well,
to do the election, right?
He could have had an election and been like, kind of like what happened in our election,
right? like Trump did. I'm just saying, you know.
One thing about
he did actually.
But go ahead.
He actually did, but what happened was he was not, like, you know, comfortable enough to do it on time. And then the Tigrayan People Liberation Front, they had confidence. You know, we were in power. We did a lot of things for Ethiopia. Ethiopians are not going to betray us. They're going to elect us, you know.
Yeah.
That kind of confidence. And then they wanted to follow the Constitution, what the Constitution says, right?
Now, who did they have?
And then they did the election. Even though the federal government, even though Abiy Ahmed said no, they did the election.
Who did they have to run against him?
No, they didn't do the federal, but the regional.
Okay.
They have no power to do the regional. They were already kicked out.
Okay.
They were already kicked out from the federal government, from each individual of power.
Oh,
like,
wow.
you know, from some of them were like, you know, ministry of this, minister of that, minister of this.
Mm-hmm.
He gave them, like, you know, small letter, like, you know, you're
your
not
service
in power
no longer
anymore.
needed.
Right? You're not in this place. You're not in this place. You know, everybody went to their
Wow.
region.
So he came in, just cleared house.
He cleared the whole entire house.
Wow.
And the problem is it's an ethnic thing, you know.
Yeah.
He's Oromo, and then they are Tigrayans. And then I think the problem was like, you know, going to ethnic instead of like, you know, being an Ethiopian and serving the country. Like, you know, they were talking about this and that and this, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
And because of his background, he's Oromo, and the Oromo population is big, he thinks like, you know, I have a big
I got the following behind
follow me behind, and I
Wow.
could do this, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he, even in the Ministry of Defense, most of them, like, you know, are from Oromo, and he already convinces them they are ready. You know, if there is fighting starts, you know, they are ready to fight, and they can get rid of them. So he started, like, you know, talking with the Ministry of Defense, most of, like, you know, big generals and stuff. He told them, "You guys be careful. I'm the prime minister from now on. Whatever I told you, you gotta follow," you know. He was like, you know, giving them like, you know, kind of, and then also one of the big Itamajorshum, which is the Ministry of Defense, the chief officer, he was from Tigray. And then we don't even know the investigation, but he was murdered in his own house.
Wow.
On that kind of conflict. So the tension was like, you know, getting very,
Yeah,
you
getting
know,
a little tight, getting a little tight.
get
there.
tight. And once the tension started to get tight, and the Tigray regional place, they said, okay, this isn't okay. And then they have like, you know, northern division in Tigray, and then they had start conflict with them. And then he immediately declared to Ethiopian people, he called them Unta,
Now, what is that?
junta.
Judah?
Do you know what junta means?
No, what is that?
Which is like, I think it's a Spanish word, unta or junta. They call it unta or junta. This is just some of the group, a group of leaders, like, you know, controlling a leadership without getting elected by the people. They call them unta.
Unta.
G-U-N-T-A.
Unta. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I pronounce it junta.
Junta.
But most of the people unta.
Unta. Okay.
So,
So the correct is unta.
unta.
Okay. Let's do the correct one then. Unta.
Then the war erupted. And it was 2004 and 2020. Start fighting. Immediately, the air forces, you know, the big artillerists, you know, like more than like 20 divisions of, like, you know, going to Tigray, you know, to control not only the Ethiopian Ministry of Defense, but also the area, like I said earlier, you know, the Eritrean president was saying, like, your problem is my problem, your case is my case. You know, if something has happened to your power, I'll help you, right?
Yeah.
He immediately started, like, you know, fighting, helping him too. So he came with his all military, and then they surrounded within 2 weeks, I believe, maybe, not 2 weeks, but they were planning to control the entire region within 2 weeks, but it took them more than 3-4 months. They didn't have enough thing, and then they controlled the capital city of Mekelle, and then the president of the Tigray region, he became a rebel again.
Wow.
They went outside, and then they stopped fighting, and then he came back and they controlled the Mekelle city, and they fight back. They're very strong people. They fight back. You know, they have captured multiple militaries, you know. That's how it starts. And the bad thing is the fight becomes like, you know, the entire population fight. You know why?
Why is that?
Because the Ethiopian troops, they start raping the woman.
Oh, wow.
The entire region. And they start killing each individual of, like, you know, they use the Tigrayans. Instead of, like, you know, fighting the army and the people in power and whatever is the Tigray People Liberation Front party members, they start killing everyone.
Now, when you say they, who is they? That's the
They means the Eritrean troop,
Eritrean
the
troops.
Amhara militia, and the Ethiopian troops.
Oh wow!
They want everything, and then they start killing everyone, and then the entire region of Tigray people got irritated, and they had to go all the way to the jungle, to fight back.
So man, you guys was getting the Tigrayan people was getting hit from the Eritrean, Eritrean, and Amari.
Yeah, exactly.
same
and
time.
another region is Amhara, which is one of the biggest regions.
But you guys was getting hit at the same
Getting
time.
hit like from
all
everybody,
angles. Wow.
because they say this junta, the prime minister already declared those are terrorists. They're trying to divide us. They're trying to take the power away. So everybody needs to get up and let's control them.
Wow.
And kind of they've been in power for a long time too. And then just the way he is it was very inflamed. The way he talked. Just like, the Rwanda genocide, how
Yes.
it started.
Yes.
It was started from one radio station, somebody say something and then get irritated, and everybody was like, start to hate them. And then they said, oh, we need to kill them, everyone. That's how they start. There are a lot of medias at that time were aggravating the issues.
Yeah.
Especially, there is one media located in Washington, D.C.
Fox.
called ISAT. No.
Oh.
ISAT. That was Ethiopian media. Ethiopian satellite television.
Okay.
That was like, they said, those people are only 5 million people. We are like, 110 million people. We're just going to get rid of everyone, the 5 million people, and then we can just have peace. They have said that
Wow.
in front of the people, and it was recorded. And that's how they motivate a lot of people. And then the military was like, start to kill everyone. So all the doctors, the lecturers, the nurses, farmers, drivers, everybody went to jungle and they fight back again.
Okay.
That's how it started. So it was kind of cleansing, ethnic cleansing.
Ethnic cleansing.
Ethnic cleansing, yeah.
Yeah.
It was just like, a dozen of people, like, you will find, like, dozen of people, like, murdered here, murdered there, rape, a gang rape, It was it was awful.
Brutal.
That's how it started to go
Wow.
the war.
Wow. So now you kind of laid out how the Eritrean and the Amari people kind of joined forces because of guy. He was sweet talking to him. Hey, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
And so he got both factions to come and join and back him against the Tigrayan people. So,
well, a little bit on that behind the joint army, how they got involved. The Amhara militia, some of the investors actually, they want to control. There are some a very harvest place called Wolkite and Wolkite and Humora. Those Wolkite and Humora, the Amhara people thinks, not the Amhara people, but the Amhara elite thinks this land is theirs.
their land.
Their land.
Wow.
But this is particularly a Tigray land, and there are a lot
Now,
of
why
Tigrayan people.
why do they think that land belonged to them? Is it something from ancient time?
Yeah, that's why they said. But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like involved in this war. That kind of the people of the Wolkite and the Humora can decide it if they are Tigrayans or Amhara.
So
And the federation council members have started already to investigate this, and then even the Tigray region government says if there is any concern about any land, the people of that part of land can decide where to live. There is no way you can, but the Amhara militia and the Amhara elitists think, okay, they migrate a lot of people from Tigray to live there, and they've been living there for the last 30 years, and then they will say, we are Tigrayans. We cannot do this. We're just going to eradicate all of them. We're just going to kill them, and then we're going to get our land. This is evil,
Wow.
How could you do that?
Man, I guess what they say, there's nothing new up under the sun. What has will always be. Because, man, it kind of sound like what's going on in the Israel and Palestine.
Right, exactly.
The fighting over the land.
Uh-huh.
Oh, no, this land belongs to me. No, this land belongs to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, E, I'm going to tell you, man, as you telling me all this here,
Mm-hmm.
The backstory of how this conflict began,
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm just thinking about, man, that sound like some people was watching you guys conflict and trying to start something over here in America by basing off what what you guys are doing and fighting over, man. It's very similar.
Right.
It is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So continue with the how the militia of the Mari and the Ethiopian came together, so the people could know more about that.
Right, and yeah, so they had created their own cause. Eritrea had some kind of revenge, because during when TPLF was in power,
Mm-hmm.
they had fight over land also. Like when Eritrea declared they are independent, they came back to say, "Oh, we have left some kind of land, which is Badime." He started talking about Badime is mine.
Okay, now did it have like some natural resources on this land?
To be-
Cause
To be honest with you, like in Amhara, I mean in Wolkite area, in Zagedi area, they have cotton, which is we export a lot of cotton from that area. That's a resource. But I don't think I never heard anything about Badime if there is any resource. And it wasn't that kind of. It wasn't. It was the main reason was not like that Badime area. The problem was Isaias Afwerki, which is the president of Eritrea, had a lot of questions. He wanted to control the economy. He was
all comes
he
back
was
to
demanding a lot of, because Eritrea was part of Ethiopia,
Mm-hmm.
and then he demand to have money from Ethiopia without any tax. To take some kind of sources from Ethiopia
Mm-hmm.
without tax, because he was blaming and complaining since Eritrea was under control of Ethiopia, and they don't have no established economy, and they give him 3 years free Ethiopian money until he print his own money, and
Wow.
they have actually done a lot of stuff for Eritrea, but he was kind of arrogant, dictator,
Mm-hmm.
he he doesn't want to have any peace around the region. He's still he can only survive with in conflict. He never done any kind of development in Eritrea, and the people of Eritrea is actually very sad. There's a lot of Eritreans here in diaspora. They are still talking about how he treats them. There is no any democracy, even those in military. There are women in military, and those lieutenants, colonels, generals, they can do whatever they want for those girls who are Eritreans. They don't respect them. So that kind of mentality they have.
Wow.
So he wants to help Abiy Ahmed anyways, and Abiy Ahmed choose that Eritrea because he knew that he had conflict with Tigray region, and the Amhara militia is the other cause, and all this got involved all together, to get rid of us. Not only that, but also the Turkey drones. They have sold. It's drones. You cannot sell drones for genocide. There is a world rules and regulations that everybody needs to respect,
Barbara,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But they have used like drones. They have used a lot of like uh, it was it's just awful, you know. The war was so bad, you know. There are like kids you can see, like civil innocent people, like innocent kids were like murdered and
Since you're
killed.
going down that line,
Right.
and so I think next week we're gonna ding this guy every time his phone go off. You know, he's doing something live and bing bing. So we're gonna ding him 25
I
cents.
turned it off my
25
phone.
cents every time it goes off. But you was leading up to my other question I was going to have to you. So how would you describe the war, that's been going on within the last 2 years?
Yeah.
We
It
know
was
that
very devastating.
we know that there was mass raping, gang rapes and stuff like that. And man, I can't imagine it. How horrified that must be for the women to have to deal with that. It's just but you can explain that better than I can.
Yeah.
I'm talking about you.
Yeah. It's your turn now. It's your turn now to behave. Mine is off already.
The park trying to call the pedal.
The vendors. I love this guy. He's the hero of the media. He always has some kind of, icebreaker.
Yeah. So yeah, but go ahead, continue
Right.
with
All right. So
the devastation.
it's a very devastating situation. The people of Tigray is actually still in siege. Still, kids are dying every day. There is the whole health sectors, the whole factory, the entire sources of the Tigray people has been looted by the Eritrean government, troops, and the Amhara militia. Whatever they can take, they have taken it. If they cannot take it, they have to destroy it. There is a lot of graphic videos that they've been burning, houses, cars, factories. Adwa Textile has been burned by them. The Adigrat medicine pharmaceutical factory was a big one. It was looted and burned. There are multiple small factories. Saba Engineering, the gold mining in Shire has been looted and been destroyed. Even some hotels, to be honest with you, I've seen it from the video. Some of the hotels in Shira they ran over by tank, one of those tank in front of the people. They were what kind of hate is that? There is a rule, the entire, when you have a war, even if you capture someone, there is a humanity. You have to, if one is captured, it's captured. You have to give him water. You have to give him if he needs if he has wound, you have to give him dressings.
You would
give
think.
them food, everything. You have to treat them as a human being.
Yeah.
But in Tigray, not only the TPLF fighters but also the entire people, innocent kids, militias, whoever, around, women, whatever. They just, killing, mass killings, gang rape. They have even left a lot of objects in some of the Tigrayan women.
Oh gosh.
After they have did gang rape.
Gosh. With all this devastation that's going on, do you think there can ever be truly peace?
That's
Because the reason why I asked you that before you go there, the reason why I asked that, the mind never forgets,
right.
And
Post-traumatic.
The trauma of that, you're never going to forget that trauma, and so
right, exactly. I mean that's our main topic. Is that's what it is. If this peace agreement is not implemented correctly, more genocide can happen.
Yeah.
The failure of this peace agreement one thing to tell you about Rwanda. Rwanda is like, the best example for us to talk about genocide, right? Because in Arusha, if you remember, they did peace agreement in Arusha. And then the genocide happened immediately after the Arusha peace agreement. You know why? Because the failure of the implementation. It wasn't implemented right.
Yeah.
It wasn't successfully implemented. It wasn't like, right now, the problem is, even in most of the government, are not like, taking it serious. What happened in Tigray? Even in Abiy administration, some of the Abiy administration, let me call Professor Brhanu Nega, who is the education minister, just delivered a speech yesterday. Like, he was not encouraging for the peace, but instead he was encouraging to have more war with Oromo Liberation Front, with Tigrayan people. We cannot trust this peace agreement. Instead, we need to prepare to have another war with Oromo Liberation. There is another front in Oromo Liberation Front. They are asking their independence also. They are fighting. They are actually capture and control the major city of Wallagga, which is named Nakamti, like recently. They've been fighting for more than 30 years to have the Oromo people independent. And that's what it is. Either you have to respect each other and respect the tribes, or let them manage their own tribe.
So do you really do see peace in the near future?
That's the problem. Even as we speak, after it's been like more than 20 days now, maybe 18 or 17 days. It was like last Sunday, right? About 18 days, I would say, since the peace agreement signed in Pretoria and Kenya, Nairobi. You don't see a lot of flow of the aid. Medical supplies is not going through. The
that needs it.
The food is not going through. Even the Eritrean government is still in Tigray and killing a lot of dozens. As we speak, people are dying. I just actually got some news from Tigray TV, which is a dozen of people has been murdered in Igala, which you call it Igala. Like some of them are 68 years old, some of them 10 years old, 18, 17 years old. Like, 63 people was like, murder around Shire. They're just killing them,
So do you think that the UN need to send troops in to broker, not whether it's been signed, but to enforce this treaty?
Definitely. This is what I'm talking about today. Our main message is today for the international community. They have to send the troops to be in between, to save the people of Tigray. Even after the peace agreement, the Eritrean government is still there. The Eritrean troops are still in Adwa, Aksum, Shire. They are killing and murdering people. They're not letting, to pass the aid through. They're not even within the peace agreement, the federal government and the regional government has been signed. They have signed that the constitution is supposed to be effective. And the constitution says the regional government and the federal government has to protect the borders. And whatever is a foreign body in there, the foreign government has to go where he came from. They're not doing that. They are still playing games in there. They are still killing people there. They are still, the people are like still in the jungle. They are not able to come back and start their life again. They are looting a lot of sources from Tigray. And even the Amhara militia is like, going through from Walgait, Humora, all the way down to Adwa. So the international community, I believe, I personally believe that the United Nations, the UN, they need to send troops so that way they can force the Eritrean government and troops to go out of the Tigray. Because you cannot trust, even like I said, if Professor Burhanu is one of the big advisor of the Abiy Ahmed, the prime minister, and he also the education minister. And he's just not like, encouraging. The way they talk is not encouraging for peace. Well, instead, the Tigray Regional Council has confirmed this.
I'm going to tell you, E, if it's not affecting him,
exactly, doesn't care.
It doesn't care.
Yeah.
And as long as it doesn't affect his pockets or affect him or his family,
right?
He don't care.
Right.
Don't care.
And he has kind of revenge. Some of the elitists, the Amhara elitists, some of them said, in Dargacho Tsege said last time, no mercy for those people. For those people. Could you imagine that? He didn't even say for TPLF or for party or for rebel or for anything. For those people, the people he's pointing out, the Tigray people. No mercy. He killed them without mercy. No. That's a genocide. That's ethnic cleansing. That's how starts the genocide. And like Asad, I told you the TV last time what they said. Yeah. Those 5 million, this is, we need to get rid of them. And then we can like 110 people. How could you eradicate 5 million people?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are people all over. One person is doing it, this one, Abiy Ahmed, because he had some kind of problem with TPLF, right? Because he's a prime minister. And one Tigray people can do something when there is an opportunity tomorrow, right? He cannot do that. This is the peace agreement has been signed already. They need to implement it. Everybody needs to work, and for the sake of the people, for the sake of the innocent kids, for the sake of the innocent women, for the sake of those people who are sick with malnutrition. You can see there is a lot of people suffering in malnutrition, suffering with hypertension, suffering with diabetic mouths, suffering with different kind of all this we need to think, and then we need to talk about the peace agreement to be implemented. If this is failed,
yeah,
the bad or the worst genocide can happen again.
Yeah, if you don't prevent it, then
we have to act now.
Yeah,
right.
So, in closing, what would you like to say?
Well, my followers, the people of Tigray, whoever, we're not talking about politics in this today. Cyber Power of Tigray Media never, ever say anything about politics. We are always behind the people of the victim.
The people, right?
The people and the victims.
Yeah.
We don't care who is leading the country. Abiy can lead forever. I don't care. And TPLF can do their election. They can lead forever. But in between, we have to follow we have to protect the people, the innocent people, the kids, our women. Tigray is not connected yet. They're supposed to reconnect the Tigray. There is no TV. There is no any media is going through to Tigray. There is no phone. Everybody has a smartphone, but they're not using it. They haven't even released the data yet. There is no electricity at all. How could we, do the peace agreement and then keeping it until the disarmament how do you expect the Tigray people to disarm when the foreign countries and the Amhara militia who are evil and killing people are like, inside Adwa, Aksum, Shire, and Shiraro? Those people who are displaced from their own homeland and from their own house are not back to their home yet. Yeah. How you cannot survive even 5 days without eating, without drinking when you are on the jungle. These people need to go back to their own home and start the media, and if there is needs to be investigate, they can investigate everything. If there is any atrocity or anything that happened between this, accountability can be done. Justice can be served. That needs to be like served in a peaceful way. So make a peace, and I don't think those people are gonna make it peacefully, all this transition, but I personally believe the United Nations needs to go there and force this peace agreement before it's too late. This is our call as a cyber power of Tigray media, as an individual person. This is my message for the entire world.
Yeah, and there you have it. Also, don't forget to click and subscribe for more content, for more updates from Cyber Power Tigray Media. They're going to bring it to you. He's going to bring it to you. And like and share the video to help get the word out even more, to get people talking about it. And not only talking about it, perhaps get involved and make things happen. All right, that's it for today's show. My name is Devanda Smith. Alongside me is the man, the myth, the legend,
Ephraim. Ephraim. All right, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Yeah.
Please share and subscribe. And
we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Peace out.